My name is Alex Bilmes. I'm the editor-in-chief of Esquire magazine in the UK, and this is Esquire Talks. It's a series of conversations with prominent and influential artists and creators. And today's guest, I'm delighted to welcome, is Denis Villeneuve, who is the director and co-writer of Dune Part 2.
Your blood comes from dukes and great houses. We don't have that here. Here, we're equal. Men and women alike. What we do for the benefit of all.
Welcome, Denis. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
For those who haven't been to a cinema for the past kind of decade or more, Denis is the director of a number of films. I'm not going to list them all for you, but he's the director of Prisoners and Sicario and Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and Dune, which is just called Dune, but it's Part 1, Dune Part 1, which came out in 2021, won multiple Oscars, a huge epic sci-fi adaptation of Frank Herbert's famous novel from 1965. And today, we're going to talk about that, of course, but a couple of days ago, I asked Denis if he could suggest 5 films that have influenced you in the making of this particular movie. And I actually asked for sci-fi films, but you came back with a much more interesting and unexpected list of movies, which perhaps demonstrates the kind of breadth and depth of this movie. So, Denis, thanks for doing this. And I'm going to start just by asking you to tell me about those movies. So I don't know if you remember all of the movies, but the first one on your list was Lawrence of Arabia.
It's inevitable that because it's the story of Lawrence of Arabia inspired directly Frank Herbert to when he wrote Dune, the story of a man who falls in love with a culture and that will at the end betray that culture, and this exploration of the impact of colonialism, the alienation of colonialism, and it's a movie that when I saw that movie as a film student, it was a master class into filmmaking. I'm not the first one filmmaker who will say that. Lawrence of Arabia is a landmark in film history. And when you watch a 70 millimeter print of that movie, you as a filmmaker, you cannot be the same when you get out of the theater. There's something about the use of the power of the landscape and his ability to really focus on the intimate journey of that character and keeping in those grand scale action sequence how he used the power of the desert to express himself. I couldn't lie. I mean, it is a movie that had a tremendous impact on me as a filmmaker and had a tremendous impact on Dune.
As you were saying, you saw it at film school. As a film student, is it possible to imagine that you'll one day get to make a film that epic?
I will not. I will say this: David Lean, when he made this movie, had no computer-generated images.
Yes.
I mean, it's like these guys were the real deal. I mean, it's like what they were able to achieve at the time was like beyond. They have all my respect. Yeah.
As you mentioned, one of the interesting things that you're also doing in Dune, that he's doing, is that shift between the sort of epic scale and also the intimacy, because it's a story of, well, one man or a series of small relationships, right? As a filmmaker, how do you think about that before you're starting?
Frankly, the answer is pretty boring. It all comes into the screenwriting, and where I really focused part 2 this last adaptation. I really focused on precisely on the relationship between my main protagonist, Paul Atreides, and a young woman that he started a relationship with that young woman, and their relationship is at the center of the story. It's the whole movie structure on what's happening between them, and through their relationship we will learn everything about the tension of politics, and everything will unfold seen through their eyes and more. And there will be at one precise moment a shift of perspective where we will be slowly going toward the young woman Shani, that she will give me the proper distance to have a critic view on what Paul becomes.
We should probably say, because although this is a big movie and a lot of people will know everything about it, Timothée Chalamet plays Paul Atreides and Zendaya plays Shani. For those who don't know, the reason that it has numerous similarities with Lawrence of Arabia is because it's Lawrence is a white man from a different culture who finds himself in the desert and allies himself with a series of tribes, and he's sort of torn between his loyalty to his background, right? He's a sort of high-born Englishman, and his loyalty to these people he's found. And Dune is about a young man, Paul Atreides, who similarly, well, you say what's the essential plot?
It's a young man that will find shelter in a specific tribe and deep in the desert among a people called the Fremen, and who he will. And that's one thing I really that moves me in the book, where we will solidify his identity as a human being in contact with those people. He will feel home. He will embrace their culture. But this will happen in a context of oppression, where he's pushed to fight against the oppressor. But he in the book, he's afraid that if he goes too far in that fight, he might the consequences might push him toward a catastrophe, because in the background, there have been religious movements that implanted beliefs that someone will come from the outside to deliver those people. And it's like a reflection on religious colonialism.
If this Muad'Dib is a religious figure, you can't use direct force. Repression only makes a religion flourish. You'll only end up humiliating yourself.
You underestimate my Sardaukar.
You underestimate the power of faith.
Some of the characters in the book and in your movies believe that he is the Messiah, or a Messiah, and which leads us neatly to your second choice of a movie that has inspired Dune Part 2, which is a Martin Scorsese film.
The Last Temptation of Christ, which is one of my favorite Scorsese movies still to this day. It's a movie that really absolutely blow me away for many reasons when I've seen it. It's an exploration of the doubt of a human who is like obsessed with visions and ideas that are bigger than him, but at that beautiful vulnerability. And it's a portrait of the Christ that always moved me, because it brought so much humanity in that figure. And that those doubts that the Christ is dealing with as we are watching the movie is something that I felt was pretty close to the trajectory of Paul Atreides. I must say that it's also in the way Martin Scorsese portrayed that period of time. There's something about the level, the precisions of the details. It's very rare that I believe that it's like if he had taken a time machine. And I didn't question the fact that I was 2,000 years from now. I felt so real in all these little details, the customs, the habits, the way of movement, the movement. There was something so precise about all these choices. I know, to be honest, that it is a movie that tremendously influenced me as I was doing this adaptation.
I can watch that and feel the same way, but I'm not a filmmaker, so I don't know how one does that. As a filmmaker yourself, do you have a sense of how Scorsese manages to create a world that seems entirely authentic when in fact we have no idea really what it felt like to be there?
Yeah, I think it goes through an insane amount of research and is incredible sensibility, where to be open to. You feel the influence of different cultures, and they are very strong influence, and to give them, there's an honesty to it that I really moved me.
Last Temptation is about a Christ who is struggling with between feelings of spirituality and also the flesh. He wants to fall in love, marry, have a family. He has this vision where this happens. And Paul Atreides is somebody who falls in love in your movie with it, and he struggles with that too. Do you want to say a little bit about that, because that's a key element of
It's
this second movie?
It's Paul who love like on. It's in the Scorsese movie. It's a dream that the Christ has about being in family. Paul is the opposite. He's working his way into this idea of being in love, being and having to construct a world with friends, and eventually have a family and become a Fremen. But there's visions that he had of the outcome could be different, and those visions are becoming more and more prominent. And there's a pressure on him, a fear, a deep fear that he could be like a match thrown into a bucket of gasoline. You know, he's like if he's forcing, his intuition tells him that he could be the cause of a massive massacre.
Yes. They both have to sort of choose whether or not they're going to embrace this this messianic thing that has been both fated, but also you still have to choose to do it, to take it on. And so that's the kind of theme of this too,
and
right?
as the Scorsese movie finish is a happy ending, mine is a tragedy. It's not happy.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
The third film that you suggested is Akira.
Yes.
Tell us why. Why Akira?
It's a feature film that I have seen in the 90s from Otomo, a very famous Japanese director that had aesthetically was at the time a big influence of again, and when I was designing and everything that was related with Paul's transformation, when we see Paul becomes from that like quiet, humble, open figure that wants to just find its way and try to survive, becomes that dark messianic figure. There was something about its transformation that felt, and I knew when I was doing it and was directing, it can go with the hair, the silhouettes, the way I was shooting him, and it kept saying, it came in my mind. It was not a conscious choice. It's not something that it reminds me something, but and then as suddenly it became obvious as I was storyboarding. It's okay, I'm doing Akira, and that brought joy in my heart because it's a movie I absolutely adore. Yeah, and it's a sci-fi movie, one of the best, one of my favorite one that I'm never mentioning, and it's like, but still it has that tremendous impact on the way I'm making films. Those Japanese directors, there's a way to approach editing that and the choices of lenses. I'm talking. It's a cartoon, but the way they choose depth and the framings. There's a sense, something about Japanese sensibility that always blew me away about. Yeah, it's they have a different approach to how to frame and how to cut, and the rhythmic of their mise en scène is very inspiring.
And when you're talking about these as influences, are you looking at them specifically? So are you watching them as you're writing the script? Or
No. I'm just trying today to be honest.
Yeah,
because
sure.
it's not. It's,
Please
I
be
will not.
honest.
When I've been asked the question, I said to myself, well, there was no movie. I was not influenced by any movie. I really tried to focus on the book, but I'm full of bullshit because I'm the sum of many influences. So it's not. I didn't watch it. It's just from the impact I received from these movies, and I know, to be honest, those movies had a huge impact on me and influenced the making of Dune Part 2.
And again, it's someone with a character who has special powers, and whether or not he's going to use them for good or whether or not he's going to use them for evil, right?
Exactly.
All of these films have that
in common. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so the next movie, which is the one maybe that I expected the least, but in relation to Dune, and maybe that's my own ignorance and philistinism, but I just wasn't expecting you to suggest that. But I'm glad you did, because I rewatched it and it's amazing. Is Persona by Bergman. So talk a little bit about Persona.
It's a movie about identity and about intricate relationship between reality and dreams, and the use of visions in this movie, and the way he approached imagery and mental imagery, and the deep intimacy that Bergman is able to develop between his characters, and the incredible use of close-ups. In this movie, it's like a master class into how to shoot a human face, and it was by far one of my favorite movie of all time. And every time I'm framing an actor, and I get close to the camera with a camera to a human face, I know the persona is always somewhere. I know it has nothing to do with my filmography, and you can be surprised to, but Bergman has always been a massive influence on my work, even if what I'm doing is very far away.
Sure. No, I as soon as I watched it again and then thought about your movie, the close-ups in particular on the faces, Zendaya's face or something, right? Especially on this amazing big screen where I saw your movie. I haven't seen it in IMAX yet, but on the big screen, you can absolutely see that there's something going on.
And there's something about the relationship between the character and the landscape, the both women being on this island, the isolated island, the way you use the landscape to reflect the psychology of the characters, and how there's in French we said une épure, there's like a purity in the way formal aspect of the movie, where it's like the focus is always the human face. It's like even sometimes the sets are like barren gray backdrops or just white sky, or there's something about embracing that purity. I think it's a perfect movie, and I'm trying to just like keep that as a beacon somewhere in my mind. Yeah.
I think also there are obvious echoes, for example, which we haven't mentioned at all, but Herbert's book and your films are wrestling with really big issues, as well as being an entertaining sci-fi movie, right? In Persona, we see a Buddhist monk on fire in Vietnam. We see images from the Warsaw Ghetto. We see Nazism, and how the psychological impact that has on the characters in that movie, or one of the characters in particular in that movie. And your film is concerned with fascism, with, Dune Part 2, fascism, with tremendous violence. All of these things are in there too.
Yeah, this idea that, and that, of course, Persona goes beyond, because it has a meta movie about my own reality as a filmmaker. But this study of how the politics and the pressure of the world influence the mind and corrupts the souls, and it's like something that it's present in Dune too.
Yeah. And then a complete change of pace, or maybe not, which is the last film you suggested, which is you tell us what it is. It's very different from Persona.
Yep, and it's like something that again, it's a very I'm being very honest, as I was like approaching the making of Part 2. So you always make your movie in reaction from the last one you've made, and it was the first time that I had the chance to revisit a world. So I had done Part 1, and now I had the chance to go back on Arrakis. And as a filmmaker, when you watch your a movie, you're not interested by your success, but you're focused on your failures, and you see where you can improve. And I was obsessed with rhythm and momentum in scenes, and to find a way to
rhythm.
Yeah, and to find a way to improve myself as a director. And I needed an electroshock, and it's like and I remember saying to Joe Walker at one point, I said, Joe, you must not cut the movie like if it was another Part 1 or Lawrence of Arabia approach. Yeah, Lawrence of Arabia, we have to go Roadrunner. I want you to, we have to think about Chuck Jones, We have to think about, and I remember that short of Beep Beep, I think that was made in 1952 or something, that is like one of my favorite cartoon of all time. But it's truly the idea of efficiency. It's not about humor, right? It's about the idea of there's something incredible efficiency, like a perfect cinematic IQ with very precise ideas and a way of delivering things that is superbly cinematic that I absolutely adore. And it was for me like a tiny electroshock, like a hand grenade that I was putting in my brain, knowing and that was a conscious choice. It's probably among all those movies, it's one that at first I said, okay, I'm going full Roadrunner for part 2, which makes absolutely no sense. I didn't reveal that to my crew apart from Joe Walker, but that was one of the main influence for me, the way I wrote and the way I approached mise en scène, just like to change my way of doing things. I wanted to evolve and to break something inside myself. And for that, Chuck Jones was the way to do it.
Okay. Of all those movies we've just spoken about, none of them have sequels or follow-ups apart from Roadrunner. Who kept going, right? The obvious thing to anyone who's seen the film without giving anything away, because this interview is going to come out before the movie does, is that it suggests that it doesn't end here, that there might be a third Dune movie.
But the thing is that when I try to be faithful to the book, and the book ends this way, with the beginning of a nightmare. And everything that Paul was trying to avoid during the 2 movies, finally, and it's not a secret, it's like the book exists since 60 years. But it's a tragic ending, powerful ending, but the book had that powerful ending, and I tried to respect it. Now I made sure that I will be closer to Herbert's initial intentions, and to have a critic view of what's happening. And it opened the door to Dune Messiah, that will be the 3rd chapter of that story. It's a book that I absolutely love, as the 2 first Dune book, Dune and Dune Messiah, are my favorites of the series, and are the one that I feel that have a movie in them, and I think it will be absolutely possible to do a 3rd one.
So you're going to do it?
I would love to.
Okay.
It's in the works, it will happen. It will happen when I will have something solid on the table, a screenplay, because those movies are physically difficult to make, but it's nothing compared to the screenwriting. That they are not easy to adapt. They are dense books, and in order to find the right approach, it takes a little time, and I don't want to be rushed. If I go back on Arrakis, is because I can again try to make it better.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you,
Denis. Thank you, Denis.
Thank you.
Cheers.